In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how we're going to make a collage using 4 different images. So this architectural design barn is going to be our main image, and we'll be using the pen tool and the magic wand to bring other images into this one specifically. So right now you'll see at the bottom, I am looking at 25%, it says down here, and at the top. There's a couple of ways that we can navigate around this if we need to zoom in or zoom out. You can go over to your zoom tool at the bottom here and click on it. And up at the top, you have your plus and your minus. So if I want to zoom in, I can just hit the plus a couple of times, zoom out, go up to the top, and click a couple of times. Another thing is you can go to the bottom and type, let's say 50% you want to see. You can type in 25% and it kind of brings you back down. The quick key, and which I tend to do, is the command plus or control plus on a PC, and control minus is to zoom out, or command minus. Moving forward, let's get started. Here we have our kind of shed in the middle of the lake, and what I want to do is just crop out the shed. So I'm going to zoom in, again, control plus, and I want to make sure that I have everything that I can see. I'm also able to move around the canvas here with either using the rolling ball on your mouse, or you can hold down your spacebar and get the hand, and you can move around your canvas that way. So the very first thing I'm going to focus on is the upper part, so I want to make sure I have everything here. I'm actually going to cut off the roof right at this point, so I don't really need to have the full extension of the top. And I'm going to go down onto my sidebar here and make sure that I have the pen tool selected. Any letter at the side associated is just a quick key. So if you hit P on your keyboard, it'll bring up the pen tool. How to start using the pen tool to create a path is you have to make sure you're up at the top is you have a path selected, not a shape. If you have a shape, when you're using the pen tool, you're going to actually create a shape rather than a path, whereas we want to use a path in order to create a selection. So if I started drawing right now, I would end up with a shape that has a 0 fill, so it's transparent, but it has a red stroke around it, and that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to make sure that it's set to path, and I can start. The very first thing you do when you're using your pen tool to start off your path is you just make a click and then you let go of your mouse. So just click, let go. Now everything else after that is going to be a click and a drag, or just a straight click. So right here is kind of where that peak is, and I'm going to make a click. It's a straight line. I don't have to do anything more than just a click. Then I'm going to go down at the bottom here and do a click. You're probably wondering why I am not going straight to the edge, and that's because I don't want to accidentally get any sky or anything in the background. I'm going to zoom in. So you can hit your control plus and just make sure that I have this nice and clean, my edges. And zoom out here a bit. Now the choice that you'll have to decide is, do you want to bring this walkway in or not? I personally don't, so I'm just going to exclude it. And make a selection all the way to the end here. And then very, very importantly, is you'll have to know that your last point has to touch your first point. And how you know that your path is going to end is if you click on it when you see that little circle, then that tells you that your path is ended. Right here, if I want to adjust this point, I can go down and use my plus tool. I can select it so it's selected. All I did was click on it and I moved it. I also like to move my points with having the plus tool. The reason is if I wanted to add another point, all I'd have to do is just click here and drag. So I click so it's selected. How you know it's selected is it's a solid color, whereas your other ones are hollow. And you can just move it up. And if you want, you can go around your canvas and just kind of decide if you want to adjust your points anywhere. Click on this and move it up. Zooming out. So let's say you're happy with this and now you have to make a selection. There's a couple different ways to make a selection. The first one is if I just right click, make a selection. And I don't want to have a feather. I don't want to have a blurry edge. I want a hard, sharp edge. So I keep it at 0 and I press OK. And now you can see that there's a selection going around and you can hit Control C, move over to your other document and Control V. Up at the top here, this is called your Move tool. You can click on it and move it over. You can decide where you'd like your shed to go. Double click on the word layer 1 and call it shed. Now we have to transform it. We have to make it smaller. Control T will bring up your transform box. If you're using the Photoshop CC, it does default to transform it in proper scaled proportions, but if you're using an older version of Photoshop, then hold Shift and grab in from any of the 4 corners. Never grab from the sides or otherwise you'll skew it out of proportion. So we're just going to bring this and make it smaller. Again, you can decide if you want to have it on the left side, maybe you want to have it in the front here. It's up to you where you'd like to have it. So just for now, I'm going to place it over here. And when you're happy, you hit enter. Now I'm going to close this down and I always suggest save it, put it in your student file, because if something were to happen with your collage and you accidentally closed it or the computer crashed, you don't have your file that has the path. So that's why you want to make sure that you save this so you do have it. But for now, I'm not going to. Let's look at this for sale sign. So essentially we're going to be doing the same thing again, going over to your pen tool, zooming in. So the Control plus, and first one is always just a click, click, click. And whenever you're working with straight lines, they're just clicks away. When we start working with curves, as I'll show you in a second, that gets a little bit trickier. So right now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more because I'm going to start working with curves. How to create a curve is a click and drag. And you will see that there's now this Bezier curve that goes. Right here, these 2 extensions are called your handles. They can actually shift your curve and the path. But the one thing to note about using curves is that there's a default that it always wants to go in a circle. If I wanted to make my curve go out here, it's always going to want to have a natural dip. So I'm just Control Z that, and I'm going to remove this handle so I can do whatever I want. How to remove this handle is hold Alt and click your last point and then you've lost your handle. So then you can have full control of whatever curve that you want to do. So again, I hold Alt and I kill that last point, that last handle, and again Alt, click on your point and you remove your handle. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. Alt, I will have to press to click on this, so Alt, remove my handle. I'm just clicking and dragging. Alt removes that, clicking and dragging, Alt removes. Alt, and now I'm going to go back to square, so I'm just making a click, straight line. Straight lines are quite easy to work with. And then I'm just going to over on this side. Again, I'm staying inside of the image. Okay, now I'm back to the curve, so I'm clicking and dragging, and then Alt, killing that last handle. And now again, I'm going to be working with curves, so I click and drag. And whenever you're dragging, you'll notice that your curve goes to the other direction. So right now, in order to get this to go lower and extend, I was actually moving my cursor to the right. I'm going to hit Alt and click on that last point. Alt, click on this last point up at the top. I didn't drag it, so that's why I got a straight line. I'm just going to hit Control Z. I want to have a softer curve on this. Alt, kill that last point. Alt. And I'll just keep these more of a harder edge, except at the top here. And most importantly, again, is to connect your first and your last point. So when you get that little circle, and if you want to curve it, don't just let go, click and drag, and then you will see as I zoom out, I have my selection. One thing to note is I have a path over here. So if I were to create a selection, copy and paste this over, I would have this background brought forward with me too, which I don't want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another path inside here so that I can remove it after. So I'm clicking and click and drag, Alt, and then going to the other side of the sign, clicking and dragging, just because I want this to have a nice soft curve, and then connecting them, seeing that circle. And as you notice, I can see some of the blue here, so I'm going to just want to move that up. And again, I personally like working with the plus sign. So I clicked it so it was selected, and then I can move it up, and then I can be picky, click on this one, move it a little bit lower, and maybe I want to add one in here, and then just drag it down. Okay, the other thing to note is I want it a little bit hollow in here, so I have to go back to the original pen tool, and I'm going to make another path. And then same thing with the other side. And this one has quite a deep curve, so I'm just going to remove that handle by pressing Alt and clicking on the point, and then connecting at the top. So let's count how many paths we have. We have 1 of the larger one, we have 2 of this inner one, we have 3 over here, and we have 4 over here. So if we go over to our path channel, this is our working path. They're all on one working path. And if you do not see this paths, go up to the top, Window, Paths, and it'll bring your box up. And because mine was already up, it closed it. So just go back over to here, Window, Paths, and now I'm going to go to the Convert Point tool, and I'm going to hit Shift and go around and select all my paths. There's other ways to do this. This is just the easiest way that I work, and I find it works for me. So now I have all 4 of them selected, and I can go over to this third one, which is my Load Path as a Selection tool, and click on it. And now I have my selection. Going over to my layers, since I only have 1 layer, I know that I am going to actually copy the appropriate layer. If you had multiple layers, you wanted to make sure that you did have the right selection on the right layer, because that's a lot of mistakes that I see that people make. So again, Control C, Command C, and then Control V, and paste this in the front. So here they have their home up for sale now. You can scale it by hitting your Control T and make it a little bit smaller, and then hit Enter when you're happy. Going over here, again, I suggest that you save it, but I'm not going to save it. And we have the last image to work with. So for the first couple of them, I showed you how to use the pen tool. Now this one, I'm going to show you how to use the magic wand tool. I wouldn't recommend using the magic wand tool if you're ever doing anything for print, unless you had something with proper transparency or it was clipped out properly. Your edges, when they go to print, have to be a lot more detailed than they would for web, because print is 300 dpi and web is 72 dpi. So the web has a lot more freedom to have that kind of air around your edges. So just for the sake of knowledge, I'm going to show you how we're going to use the magic wand. So let's say that my tolerance is set to 10. Your tolerance is really what's going to determine how much of this color selection you select. So right now it's 10, which means it is picking from this area right here within that 10 kind of range of colors in like colors. So if I hit, let's say 100, and I click down here, it is picking up sort of colors even inside of this airplane, because it's saying, hey, well, these colors are kind of similar around here with a tolerance of 100. So now we need to find that perfect tolerance. So let's try 50, and I'm going to hit Control D, deselect it, and then click again. So 50 looks like a pretty good tolerance right now. How you know is, let's zoom in and just go around our edges. So again, it's not perfect. As you'll notice, it is missing a little bit of chunk out of here. So since we have the background selected, if we hit over onto this third one, which is subtract from selection, I can click inside, and I guess I picked too much up. So let me just Control D, deselect, change my tolerance lower. And this might be too low, but again, it's a lot of trial and error. Okay, let's say I'm happy with this. Right now, if I were to do a copy and paste, I would actually be copying the background, this blue over, which I don't want. Up at the top, select inverse, and now you can see that it's just the airplane that's selected. So Control C, go to your other document, Control V, and here you have your airplane. So grabbing the move tool, move it up to the sky, Control T, bring up your transform box. Again, hold Shift on the older Photoshop. And maybe you want to put it landed on the ground, maybe you want to put it up in the sky, maybe you want to rotate it. So if you move your cursor on the outer edges, you get this rounded arrow. You can rotate it and still scale. And when you're happy, you hit enter. So I'm looking for your version of this. I also want to make sure that you have everything named. All your layers are named. And once you've created your own unique version, upload it to the classroom.